The world was stunned. An event no one thought possible had just unfolded before their eyes. US F-22 shot down over Taiwan Strait. The headline flashed across screens, sending shockwaves through every corner of the globe. For the first time in history, America's most advanced stealth fighter had been brought down by enemy fire. The Invincible had fallen, and the world watched in disbelief as images of the wreckage surfaced. The date, November 14, 2025. Would be remembered as the day the global balance of power shifted in an instant, echoing through history books yet to be written. The F-22, long a symbol of American air dominance and technological superiority, was no longer untouchable. Its reputation, built over decades, was shattered in a single moment. Newsrooms erupted into chaos, and governments around the world scrambled for answers, desperate to understand what had happened and what it meant for the future. How could the invisible be seen, let alone destroyed? Military analysts pored over data, searching for clues, while experts debated the implications on live broadcasts. Was it a tragic accident or a deliberate act of aggression? The world waited, anxious and uncertain, as speculation ran wild and rumors spread. Official silence from both Washington and Beijing only deepened the crisis, fueling fears and uncertainty across continents. Behind closed doors, generals briefed presidents and diplomats made urgent calls to allies and adversaries alike, trying to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The downing of a single plane now threatened to ignite a conflict between two superpowers, with military forces on high alert and the world holding its breath. The initial shock soon gave way to a grim realization. This was no accident. The evidence was mounting, and the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. It was the result of rising tensions, years of military posturing, and a dangerous arms race in the Pacific that had finally reached a breaking point. The fall of the Raptor was a message. China had openly challenged US dominance, signaling a new era of confrontation and uncertainty. The era of unchallenged American power in the Pacific was over. The world order, once stable, now seemed fragile and unpredictable. A new, more dangerous chapter had begun, with dark clouds gathering over the Pacific and the threat of war looming larger than ever. The world was unprepared for what came next. Leaders scrambled to respond, but the pace of events was relentless. The F-22's loss was more than a military setback. It was a seismic geopolitical event that sent shockwaves through global markets and alliances. The rules had changed overnight. Old assumptions no longer held, and new dangers emerged from the shadows. The balance of power was now uncertain, with every move on the global chessboard carrying unprecedented risks. The world stood on the edge of something far more dangerous, a future where peace was no longer guaranteed and every decision could tip the scales toward conflict. The Taiwan Strait, barely 100 miles wide, has long been a global flashpoint. Beijing sees Taiwan as a breakaway province. Taiwan sees itself as sovereign. The US walks a tightrope, acknowledging China's claim but supporting Taiwan's defense. This strategic ambiguity has kept the peace, but also made the region a tinderbox. In the years before 2025, China's military grew rapidly, flexing its muscles near Taiwan. Chinese warplanes and ships crossed the strait's median line, testing US resolve. The US responded with more patrols and freedom of navigation operations. American and Chinese forces operated in dangerously close quarters. Any miscalculation could spark disaster. The stage was set for the fateful encounter of November 14th. The powder keg was ready to explode. The F-22 Raptor, legendary, nearly invisible, and unmatched in the sky. Its stealth design made it a ghost to enemy radar. Thrust vectoring engines and supercruise gave it unmatched speed and agility. Advanced sensors fused battlefield data for total situational awareness. The Raptor was built to dominate any airspace. On November 14th, Major John Viper Thompson flew a routine patrol over the Taiwan Strait. His mission: gather intelligence, remind Beijing of America's presence. The F-22 had never been caught, until now. Its reputation created a sense of invulnerability in the US military. That belief would be shattered in a single moment. The myth of invincibility was about to end. Rumors of a Chinese breakthrough in quantum radar had circulated for years. Unlike conventional radar, quantum radar uses entangled photons to detect even stealth aircraft. When a photon interacts with a target, its entangled twin instantly changes, revealing the object's presence. This technology is nearly immune to traditional stealth and jamming. On November 14th, China's quantum radar in Fujian tracked the F-22 with precision. Major Thompson, confident in his stealth, was fully visible to Chinese operators. The F-22's technological edge had been erased by a leap in physics. The West had underestimated China's innovation. In the cockpit, Major Thompson gazed out at the endless blue, the world below a distant memory. The sky was clear, the horizon calm, and for a moment, he felt invincible, untouchable in the world's most advanced fighter jet. Suddenly, the tranquility shattered. Alarms blared, red lights flashed across his console. A missile lock warning screamed for his attention, jolting him into action. Instinctively, Thompson executed desperate maneuvers, banking hard and deploying flares and chaff in a frantic attempt to break the lock. Years of training kicked in as he fought to outsmart the unseen threat, but this was no ordinary missile. Guided by cutting-edge quantum radar, it was immune to every countermeasure he had. The missile closed in, relentless and precise, tracking his every move. Meanwhile, deep in a fortified command bunker in Fujian, Commander Li Wei watched the American jet's icon flicker on his radar screen, tension thick in the air. The order from Beijing was unambiguous. If the US crossed the red line, engage without hesitation. Every eye in the room was fixed on Li as he weighed the consequences. Today, Raptor 1 had crossed it. With a steady hand, Li gave the order, launch. The room held its breath. Outside, a new generation missile roared to life, streaking skyward, guided in real time by a network of satellites and ground stations. The F-22 twisted and turned, pushing the limits of physics, but the missile adjusted perfectly, its guidance flawless, closing the gap with terrifying certainty. On the radar screen, the two symbols merged. The Raptor's icon blinked out, gone in an instant. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the command center. Then, realization dawned. Stunned celebration erupted among the personnel. They had done the impossible, shot down a Raptor, the pride of American air power, a feat once thought unattainable. For the first time, American air dominance had been broken. The world watched in disbelief as the myth of invincibility crumbled. The myth of stealth was shattered in seconds, its secrets laid bare for all to see. The world's most advanced fighter was no longer safe. Every nation now questioned the future of their own air fleets. The balance of power had shifted overnight, sending shockwaves through military alliances and global strategies. The age of the invisible jet was over, its legacy now a cautionary tale. A new era had begun, one where technology, strategy, and power would be redefined forever. At Kadena Air Base, disbelief turned to panic as Raptor 1 vanished. In Washington, the president was rushed to the situation room. The briefing was blunt. We've lost a Raptor, likely shot down. Shock and fury swept through the US government. Emergency meetings began. Options ranged from diplomacy to military action. In Beijing, the mood was tense. Victory mixed with dread. China had proven its capability, but now braced for US retaliation. Both governments went silent, heightening global anxiety. Behind the scenes, militaries on both sides went to high alert. The US moved assets into the region. China fortified its coast. The world waited, breath held, for the next move. The silence was the calm before the storm. The crisis had reached a dangerous new level. The US response was swift and targeted. Less than 12 hours after the F-22 was down, the order came, strike the quantum radar site in Fujian. B-21 stealth bombers and Navy submarines launched a swarm of advanced cruise missiles. Flying low and jamming enemy sensors, the missiles evaded detection. The Chinese were looking for planes, not a coordinated missile barrage. The radar facility was obliterated in a series of pinpoint explosions. America's message was clear: we can still destroy your most advanced assets. The strike was calibrated, devastating, but not all-out war. Yet, in destroying the threat, the US escalated the crisis. The world watched, fearing the next step. The balance of power was now in flux. Retaliation had come, but peace was far from certain. The fire had only grown hotter. News of the US strike sent global markets into chaos. Stocks crashed, oil and gold soared, and the world economy teetered. Militaries worldwide went on alert. NATO and US allies braced for escalation. The Indo-Pacific became a powder keg. Airlines rerouted flights, fearing the skies. The myth of stealth was dead. A new arms race began. Nations poured billions into quantum and counter-quantum tech. The balance of power was shattered. Uncertainty reigned. Diplomats scrambled to prevent catastrophe. The UN called an emergency meeting. The fear of nuclear miscalculation was real. The world had not been this close to major power conflict in decades. The illusion of post-Cold War stability was gone. All-out war was averted, but the world was changed forever. The events that unfolded left deep scars on the global psyche, and the sense of security that once existed was shattered. The world now stood on edge, haunted by the memory of how close it had come to disaster. A fragile ceasefire emerged, but trust between Washington and Beijing was gone. Diplomats spoke in measured tones, but suspicion lingered in every word. The old channels of communication were strained, and every gesture was scrutinized for hidden meaning. The Taiwan Strait became a permanent flashpoint, a symbol of unresolved tensions and the ever-present threat of renewed conflict. Patrols increased, and the world watched anxiously as the region teetered on the edge. Both sides doubled their military presence. The risk of accidental war soared. Every maneuver, every exercise, carried the potential to spiral out of control, and military leaders braced for the unexpected. The F-22's fall was a lesson in technological hubris. It showed that even the most advanced machines could be brought down, and that overconfidence in technology could have devastating consequences. America's faith in its invincibility had blinded it to China's rapid innovation. The balance of power was shifting, and the world's superpowers were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about their own vulnerabilities. The global order shifted. American dominance was over. New alliances formed and old ones fractured as nations recalibrated their positions in a world where no single power could dictate the rules. A new, unstable, multipolar world took shape. Uncertainty became the new normal, and leaders everywhere struggled to adapt to a landscape defined by shifting allegiances and unpredictable threats. The arms race accelerated, focused on quantum, AI, and autonomous weapons. Nations poured resources into research, desperate to gain even the slightest edge in the next generation of warfare. Warfare became faster, more complex, and harder to control. Decisions that once took hours now happened in seconds, and the margin for error shrank to almost nothing. The risk of automated conflict grew. Machines made decisions at lightning speed, sometimes beyond human understanding, raising fears of unintended escalation. The downing of the F-22 was not just the loss of a jet, it was the loss of an illusion. It marked the end of an era, forcing nations to reckon with the limits of their power and the dangers of unchecked ambition. In a world of rising tensions and rapid change, catastrophe was only a miscalculation away. The future was uncertain, and every nation now faced the sobering reality that peace was more fragile than ever before.